Oh, I think I'd give him a bit of a break on that one, Alan. I mean, you've just lost an election and you're just realising you've not only lost it, but losing it big time. I think you've got to cut him a bit of slack on that one. But certainly in the debates, I felt that, yes, he came across as I wrote for The Spectator, quoting Queen Victoria about the Prime Minister Gladstone way back in the day, where he basically did not know how to relate to her, and she complained, "He addresses me as if I were a public meeting." And that's exactly what Mr Morrison did with the voters right through the campaign. It was always trying to shout down the opposition, shout down the questions, and actually just stick to the talking points rather than, changing gears, showing a bit of light and shade, showing a bit of subtlety, showing a bit of the fact that he can be an ordinary bloke. I mean, Albanese, for all his faults, I think actually cut through with that. And I think as a result of that and the fact that he was able to tell his story over and over again, the log cabin to White House story that he keeps falling back on, we're going to hear about it all the way to the next election. But it's actually, I think, going to help the new Prime Minister have an extended honeymoon.
So basically you're saying the election was won by framing it as a referendum not on Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, but on Scott Morrison, the man.
That's right. And in that sense, and whatever you think of Scott Morrison as a Prime Minister, as a politician and a leader, I think it sets a dangerous precedent when a party frames its whole campaign effectively on, we're not Scott Morrison. He is a nasty, bad, even evil bloke. I mean, some of the Labor Party's advertising and certainly some of the points that they were making, I think Jason Clare on the Friday before the election went on television and said, Scott Morrison is empathetic without the M. I mean, that type of insult I think is disgraceful. But I think if you've won an election on the back of that type of tactic, it sets a dangerous precedent. In the future, it will be used by either side of politics.
Just come back to the point that you made, though, that many of these problems were the Liberal Party's own making. Now, there were many Liberal voters who were appalled at the denial of basic freedoms during lockdown, these authoritarian measures. I mean, people actually in the streets with guns in communities where people had fled from Europe to avoid that sort of stuff. I mean, people arrested sitting on park benches, a pregnant woman arrested for creating a Freedom Day event on Facebook, just encouraging people to protest against lockdowns, arrested in her own home, not a peep from the national leadership. I mean, that contributed to the alienation of the Liberal Party from the voting public.
Well, I think that's true, but I think you've got to also keep in mind that a lot of that awful stuff, particularly that poor woman in Ballarat who was arrested in front of her children in her pyjamas, that was done by state governments, by state authorities. Because one of the things that's been highlighted by the pandemic is in this area, the federal government actually could do very little. But I think that the Prime Minister and the coalition government should have been much more active, much more vocal in criticising the states and trying to actually knock those premiers' heads together so that they acted consistently, but they also acted morally and responsibly.
Absolutely. And should have been upfront saying this will not happen in the country that I lead.